Hello, everybody. My name is Nicholas PHAN, and I am one of the regular hosts of Heard Over the Piano, CAIC's online discussion series about all things art song. I'm also the artistic director of CAIC, and welcome to today's episode, which is the second of our second season. As always, please let us know if you have any technical issues by dropping a note in the Facebook comments, and we will do our best to address those as we go. And also, please let us know if you have any questions for our guests today. And if you have those, also please type those into the Facebook comments, and I'll be sure to ask those of our guest. Today's guest is 2021 Collaborative Works Festival artist, pianist Ronny Michael Greenberg. In case you aren't familiar with Ronny's work yet, he's performed in such venues as the San Francisco Opera War Memorial, the Vienna Concert House, the Montreal Place des Arts, and he's also a full-time member of the San Francisco Opera music staff. He's also the CEO and artistic director of Taste of Talent, a San Francisco Bay Area nonprofit organization that showcases the connective power of music and art through sensational experiences and promotes entrepreneurial empowerment of artists. Ronny, if you would join me. Awesome. Hi.
Hi. Hi, Nick. Hi, everyone.
How are you?
I'm doing well. And you?
I'm doing okay, thank you. It feels good and overwhelming to be back at things, you know? I'm sure you have a similar sensation.
Yeah, there's been a lot of performing going on, which I'm super grateful for. And I just want to say a huge thanks to Collaborative Arts Institute of Chicago for inviting me to perform on this really special program.
Well, thank you very much for joining us. Again, this was your second time with us. You were with us in earlier this year, which feels like forever ago. I mean, it's crazy to think that it was just March or February. We filmed that in February, didn't we?
Early February, yeah.
Yeah, so that was the Winter Leader Lounge of last season with baritone Eddie Nelson, Edward, who actually, I think, just made the finals of Operalia today.
Yeah,
Right?
he did. I was watching the semifinal round.
Oh, so exciting. So
Yeah.
when is the final?
I think it's tomorrow.
Oh man, wow.
Yeah,
It's
back
like
to
wham
back.
bam. Well, we're wishing Eddie the best, obviously, but we were so glad you could join us for the festival. And so even though this is your second time with us because of the nature of the pandemic, your first time was actually filmed out here in San Francisco. And so this was your second trip to Chicago ever?
So I went to my first trip to Chicago ever was in 2009, and I was doing an audition taking place, I believe it was at Roosevelt University. It was an audition for Music Academy of the West. And I remember I was supposed to fly in, this was like in December, and because of the weather, the flight was canceled, and I thought, wow, how am I going to make this audition? And I ended up finding I was in upstate New York at the time at SUNY Potsdam, and the closest city I could, travel from was Syracuse, New York, and there was an overnight train, 11 hours that I took from the night before. I arrived in the morning, and in 30 minutes, I walked over to Roosevelt and I did the audition.
Oh my gosh. So your audition was in Roosevelt.
I think, yeah, I believe that that's where they were holding the audition.
Wow. Wow. So did
Yeah.
you get the job?
Yeah. I got accepted, and I went to Music Academy of the West. I went there 3 times, so that was I didn't know that I'd be going there 2 other summers, but yeah, it was very exciting. That was, I guess, like the first major vocal program summer festival that I had ever, attended at the time, and it was very formative and important for me. It's really where I crystallized my.
Uh-oh. Are we still there? I feel like the internet just went crazy. It's maybe still going crazy.
Um,
Are you there?
yes.
Okay. I think my internet has gone crazy. See, I told you
Oh
things always
no.
go wrong. Sorry, Facebook. Um, can you hear me at all? Oh man, this is bad.
Your video is sometimes pausing, but I can hear you.
Okay, so you can hear me. Well, that's good. My Facebook seems to be completely frozen. Let's see if this works better. Sorry, everybody, for this technical moment. Um, oh, yeah, now it seems to be working. Well, that's good.
Little blip.
So, um,
Yeah,
where
so that
you got
so
to go to Music Academy?
I got to go to Music Academy. That was my first time in Chicago, and I haven't been back to Chicago since then. So it's been 11 years, 12 years since then, and it was just such a huge pleasure
Wow.
to go to Chicago.
And so, what was your favorite aspect of this trip aside from our performances, naturally?
You know, I'm trying to decide between the art that I got to see, the beautiful art museums of Chicago, and the culinary scene. It's kind of a hard one for me.
So, what culinary? I mean, I think you made it into Alinea, didn't you?
Yes, it was a very last minute, completely out of nowhere opportunity the night before an 8 p.m. slot opened up. And I had a sense, I checked on the reserving, booking site, and I snatched it immediately. And yeah, that was a very, very mind blowing experience at Alinea.
That is so cool. I've actually never had the chance to go, so I have to say I must admit that I'm jealous.
We should, when we go back, we should go together.
Exactly. I'm gonna let you work your reservation magic, and we'll get in somehow. Um, so uh, I know that our audience, has met you before, but you've actually this is your second time on this little series that this virtual chat series that we do. Um, but just remind us, you grew up and were born in Montreal, right? And did you study there? Like how did you get into the piano? Like what was it like growing up in Montreal? What brought you to the United States?
Yeah, sure. So, um, I'm a first generation North American. Both my parents were born in Romania, and so I was the first one in the family to be, born in North America. I grew up in Montreal, and at age 17, when I finished high school, you might be wondering why 17 and not 18. It's because there's no 12th grade in the province of Quebec.
Hmm.
It's a different education system there. Anyway, I finished at high school at age 17, and I applied to some schools naturally in Montreal, but there was also a piano teacher who I really wanted to study with in upstate New York at SUNY Potsdam, who I had met because I'd done a competition there when I was like 14 years old or something, and I had remembered him, and we connected again, and I took some lessons, and I really wanted to study with him. So, long story short, I went to Crane School of Music, SUNY Potsdam, and yeah, Montreal was very multicultural. I grew up with friends from a lot of different parts of the world, speaking many different languages, and that was sort of normal for me. I think in high school, I did not have a single friend of the same nationality, and I went to a high school that had 77 different nationalities in the high school. I studied, everything was taught in French in high school. My elementary school, everything was taught in English. This is something that you find in Montreal. There's sort of the bilingualism. So I grew up with bilingualism as the baseline. Then on top of that, it's very normal in Montreal to run into people who will speak a third language or even a fourth language. And so I grew up with that. I love that. I think speaking different languages is a great thing for development of the brain, and there are also studies that show that when you speak another language, you're more likely to be empathetic. It develops a certain sense of understanding and willingness to understand and engage with other people who don't necessarily speak the same language as you. And yeah, here I am now in San Francisco, actually living in Oakland. But I loved Montreal. I went to conservatory there, but I left after high school, and I've done all of my formative, undergrad, masters, and post grad in the U.S. on the East Coast.
And so, just circling back, I'm just really curious. So did you grow up speaking Romanian as well?
So I didn't speak Romanian. My parents speak Romanian. I grew up speaking French, English, and Hebrew.
Hmm.
Those were the three languages going on in my household. And then in high school, I also studied Italian. So
Oh,
I finished high school essentially being fluent in four languages, which is another reason why I was then drawn to opera, especially because of the Italian and the French. I started to naturally be interested in, learning German and learning other languages and that side of things. But yeah, I didn't get to learning Romanian. I think my parents kind of had you have to choose what
hmm.
languages you want to teach. And I think he wanted my dad and my mom both wanted to focus on me learning French very well, since that's a very important language to know in Quebec specifically.
Yeah. Wow. Interesting. I think I ask because, my mom, I mean, she's first generation North American herself. So she's like you, born here. But I mean, first generation born here. Which makes me second generation on her side. But she was so adamant that we study Greek in addition to. I mean, I don't know why I made that face. She was very adamant that we study Greek in addition to the foreign languages we were studying in school here. But it's interesting, that kind of that experience of growing up multilingual for her too, because her parents really didn't speak very much English when they came over. So she grew up speaking her first language actually is Greek, even though she was born in Indianapolis. Um, and she's one of these like rarely truly bilingual people. But it's funny that experience is very similar to yours, and it was a really big priority for her to also instill in us similar things about wanting to like keep people multilingual and you know she viewed
Do
it as
you
a good thing.
do you still do you still know a little Greek?
Oh my god, it's so bad. I can understand the church lady gossip when I go with my mom to church on holidays. But it's funny. Languages are muscles. You really have to keep them up. And actually, something I've really learned about you over the last you know year and a half or so is that you seem to really work at your languages at all times. Like you keep practicing. I mean, I have to say I do, and I'm a little lazy because like my German and my French are great. My Italian's like because I don't sing a ton in Italian these days. But like it's just because I encounter those at work, and so you know I mean, you understand that, but it's like you seem to like actually like be working some sort of Duolingo situation or something, and you seem to be studying at all
Yeah, I
times.
was well.
Really
Well, my
admire.
wife, my wife speaks Spanish, and her family speaks Spanish, and so I took it upon myself to take a course when I was. This was before we got married legally. We're still planning our wedding, COVID. But I was still looking to kind of impress her family, and so I took it upon myself to really study some Spanish, and because we were doing a trip to Puerto Vallarta in Mexico, and I wanted to be able to order and to say hello and to talk to people, and I did, and I think I got some points on the parents' side for
Bravo.
that.
So okay, so then you just led us to where you started. You kind of started shifting your focus to pianist with but living in the opera singing world.
Yeah. So my undergrad and graduate degrees are in piano performance, and I discovered opera and collaborating with singers in my undergrad. Although I do remember when I was 16 years old, I played in this concert and I accompanied a singer who was singing Sunrise Sunset from Fiddler on the Roof. Like that performance in particular resonates with me as maybe like the first ever performance with a singer. But yeah, SUNY Potsdam had a very vibrant vocal program, and Stephanie Blythe would come through and give master classes, and pretty soon my teacher was suggesting why don't I play for one of the opera productions, and singers were knocking on my door to play for their voice lessons and then their voice recitals, and that's really where it all started for me at Crane at SUNY Potsdam with opera, and especially I would say with recitals and concerts, because I really I didn't have any friends when I went there. I didn't know anyone, and the first people who I really befriended or who befriended me, who I ended up kind of getting to know and being close with were the singers in the program. And so, yeah, I think the friendship aspect of it and the making music together, and there's just a vulnerability in the voice, in the singing, and that performing. Not that there isn't a vulnerability in all performing, but there was just something very raw about being in a room with someone opening their mouth and sound coming out, and me being a part of that, intertwined. So yeah, I really grew fond of singers and collaborating with singers while in SUNY Potsdam, but I wasn't quite ready to, let go of pursuing, a solo career, or at least developing my technique as a pianist and expanding my repertoire. And so I did do a master's in piano, but I continued in the summers and at the school to work with singers. And as soon as my master's was done, I was like, okay, I'm moving to New York. I'm going to do a post-grad degree in vocal accompanying. And I'm either going to go, I'm going to apply to Merilla, which was the place I was interested in studying and going to, or I was going to move to Germany. That was sort of a very important point at which, well, I'm still here. I didn't go to Germany. So.
Yeah, no, lucky us in the Bay. You're still here.
Yeah.
So wow. And so it seems like, so, I mean, it's interesting, this theme that we're exploring this year of immigration and migration. I mean, we're obviously looking at sort of, people who are forced to migrate, but there is something about our I don't know, this calling we have to a musical life that sort of forces us into moving from place to place. It's funny for me, I felt like I needed to do that thing with New York too, where I felt like I had to go there. And then, various programs pulled me, to Houston, and then I moved back to New York. And it's funny, the only move by choice I've made in my adult life has been to come west to San Francisco, because I finally just was in a place where I could make the decision. But it's interesting, how do you feel about, I mean, obviously, I assume you love it here, and like you don't think too much about that sort of splitting of the paths.
I feel very grateful to call San Francisco, the Bay Area, my home. I think it's just unparalleled beauty here in terms of nature. Nature and food and the arts community. I feel very connected and rooted here. I've been here for basically 6 years. But in terms of, if we're diving now into kind of the immigration, migration aspect of the program, and what that means, at least for me, because I really do think that it's a personal experience, and it's different for everyone, different for every country, every situation. For me, it really is bittersweet, the migration and the, feeling accepted in a new place. And the reason why it's bittersweet, let's start off with the bitter so that I can end with the sweet. Obtaining a work-based visa in the United States is very difficult, especially for artists. That's a whole conversation in itself. I'll just sort of, say that. It's also a very lengthy process. And, the longest one you can get is about 3 years. And which means already after 2 years, you have to start thinking about what you're going to do. So you kind of once you get a visa, if you can even get the visa in the first place, you have about 2 years to just kind of live, create, perform. But then comes the end of that second year, and you're already thinking, what am I going to do? And will it work? Will I be able to continue staying here? So that aspect of it is the bitter aspect. It's has always in the past provided anxiety, uncertainty, and it's a lot of work to figure that out. The sweet aspect of it is that the community that I've found here is so supportive, and I feel very much included and integrated and a part of the community, the arts community and society here. and in many parts of the U.S. where I've lived, New York and now Chicago, and so that I would say that was so important in the process of, as you said, choosing to make this my home. I really felt an overwhelming amount of support from all the organizations, I've been through, including Marilla and San Francisco Opera, San Francisco Ballet.
Mhm.
I was with them for a year, and number of other organizations that I had done work for over the years. But here I am, 15 years later, and thanks to love, I am now in the final process of applying for a green card. And when I obtain this document, hopefully within the next year, that will be an incredible relief and feeling.
Wow. I actually know that what a relief that's going to be. I've had many friends and former partners have to kind of grapple with those issues. And it's great that there's a big sweet aspect of it all for you. And you can't get sweeter than sort of having, falling in love being the reason that keeps you here,
Yeah.
allows you to stay. That's amazing.
Yeah.
So, okay, I should say, for those who are viewing and who didn't get a chance to really see we're previewing today, obviously, or not obviously, we are previewing our concert broadcast Friday, which is the second concert of the Collaborative Works Festival this year, which we filmed on October 8th at the Driehaus Museum. And it was for a very limited audience because we had a very limited capacity. And so this is actually a largely virtual event. So I hope lots of people tune into this. But Ronny played really beautifully. And the theme of this particular concert was called The Strangers. And the theme was featuring music of composers who they themselves had migrated or immigrated during the course of their lives. And so, I don't know, Ronny, what was it like playing some of this music in that context?
Well, first of all, there were 5 singers, if I remember correctly.
Yes, there were 5 of us.
Amazing. I'm used to maybe performing with 2, 3, maybe 4, but it was really special to get to know, well, actually 3 of the singers I've already performed with, and then 2 of the singers were new collaborations for me. And so it was just a wonderful mix of new collaborations and the music itself. The thing that really hit me was I didn't know a lot of it, but I felt like I should, that it was such great music, but somehow just underperformed, underappreciated. And I think that this is a really amazing program showcasing music that everyone should be, enjoying. So thank you for programming this concert and this whole series, Nick. I think it's a brilliant showcase.
Well, thanks. There's so many songs out there. I always feel like song is this kind of Pandora, like in terms of when you're looking at the various little boxes that we put our music into, and you think about art song. Once you open up that box, which seems so tiny on the surface, it's really like Pandora's box, and this whole like universe comes out of there. And it's wild and crazy, all the stuff that's in there. And that's why we are here as an organization, is to kind of give all of that a platform. And as much as we love getting to do our Schubert and familiar Schumann and songs that real song lovers seem to really know, it's actually been a real lesson, because a lot of that stuff too is unfamiliar to people. And so in a way, everything feels new all the time. And I'm so grateful to artists like you who are so willing to dive into something that is completely unfamiliar or largely unfamiliar, and really bring it to life. Because that's the other thing about music, it needs advocates. And so I'm always grateful for artists like you who come and join us and advocate for this music along with us. Something that I thought was sort of just fun for me was, and I mean, partly because I got to listen to a fair amount of the program because I only sang a few numbers. It There were some familiar tunes, and when you put it in this context, we think of these composers as European composers, like Rachmaninoff, Stravinsky, even Korngold, and they spent a large chunk of their lives living in the United States, and they all died here. It's it's interesting to me how even in the ways which we celebrate and revere those people that I just listed, we still view them as foreigners, but they all naturalized, they all became American citizens, they died American citizens. There was something about that perspective to me that was really new. And I mean, for me, being, I'm half Chinese, and so I have like this, and I'm American. So I always approach European classical music feeling like an outsider, like there's some sort of just feeling of I'm not part of the tradition, or the tradition isn't part of my blood, or whatever, BS that is really kind of ultimately just garbage. But it's these beliefs that we kind of, they seep into us over time, because that's sort of how history views this stuff. And it was interesting to look at things like the Rachmaninoff vocalese and think of it as written by an American composer, I don't know if you had a similar experience, but that was the thing that was really striking to me about this particular program.
Well, I think just the first song, God Bless America.
Right.
I remember looking at that on the program and thinking, wow, okay, that's an interesting choice to start the program. Like, I don't know where we're used to, I kind of associated a bit like it's kind of like a national anthem, is it?
No, I mean, I think it was no, what America the Beautiful was the strong contender, but it is reviewed
Sounds like
in a
it.
similar way. I mean, it's seeped into American consciousness.
Everyone knows it. They kind of consider it this, God bless America. God. You hear it all the time, and I think the presidents say it too, and God bless the United States of America, right? And then it's Irving Berlin, born in Russia, composer, which I think a lot of people. I didn't know that. So I thought that was just a great way to start the program already. Like, oh, here's this familiar tune. Guess what? It was written by someone born in Russia.
Yeah, by like a refugee who came to this country. It's really,
Yeah, I thought that was perfect. And I think the range of composers and styles on the program is really amazing. Like, there's something on this program for everyone. There is really modern. There's this. I forget the name of the Polish.
Marta
composer.
Ptaszinska.
So that's a very kind of like pointillistic, expressionist sort of piece. If you like sort of more abstract expressionist kind of music. But yeah, God Bless America, Irving Berlin, Ukulele at the end, which is like a French kind of a cabaret tango kind of music. There's a really wide range, and Korngold and Rachmaninoff have that grandness, grandeur to them, and Korngold was a Hollywood composer, so he came from Austria, and then he ended up writing music for Hollywood movies in California and in the United States, and Rachmaninoff was touring also. I mean, a lot of his music was used in movies, and he was doing big concertos and performing that kind of big Hollywood music. So I think there's really a lot on the program. And then, of course, the Rebecca Clark songs are just gorgeous, just beautiful, including that one that you discovered that is possibly and supposedly, the world premiere of it, which was a very cool setting. I can't remember exactly what the text was, but it was.
Yeah, the text was a Christina Rossetti poem, but it was called Uphill. Yeah, that was a fun discovery. I've been really fascinated with her over the last few years. She's I knew her viola sonata because I studied the viola once upon a time. I never played it, but like I knew of it. And I know it's like this core piece of the repertoire for the instrument, but I didn't really realize she had written songs until recently, a couple of years ago when I was programming some other stuff. And then I've been wanting to learn more about her music. And, thankfully I got connected to the person who owns all her manuscripts. And, he was very gracious to let me read through a bunch of them. And this song in particular, I don't know, there's something about it that reminds me a little bit of Vaughan Williams, but it's very much still her own language. It reminds me, that particular song reminds me a little bit of The Call from the Five Mystical Songs. Or no, but
It
one of
does
the
have
five.
that kind of slightly magical harmonies and sonorities in it.
Yeah. And I mean, I don't know, it's such a pretty piece with the whole question and answer. And the poem is so beautiful too, this sort of like line of anxious questioning and then some voice from somewhere saying, it's going to be okay.
Yeah.
Nice hopeful take on moving over. And again, she was another one where I just, we think of her as a British composer, but she spent the majority of her life living in the United States, and she was actually born to an American parent. So, she never even had to naturalize when she got stuck over here in World War II. And it was really eye-opening for me personally. I mean, this is my personal journey with classical music in general. It's this thing that I'm constantly interrogating as a programmer and a performer is, who has the permission to do what, and what exactly is like, national style. And it's so interesting to these boundaries are so permeable and fluid. So this was our first, I should say this too, this was our very first partnership with the Driehaus Museum as an organization. That was really exciting for us, but what was it like for you to be able to go into the museum and perform in that amazing room?
I mean, I remember looking it up on like Google Earth or Google Maps and like and I think I even walked around the area leading up to the performance and just thinking like, wow, I can't wait to go inside. But it really felt like a warp in time a little. Like the building itself is just beautiful, and the room where we performed had a natural, perfect acoustic and wonderful piano. And yeah, it was just very warm and inviting and kind of perfect to set the scene for, essentially any program I think you'd want to present in there. Very flexible, but I'd say inviting, warm, intimate. Those are the things that I was getting from the space, which I think is perfect.
Yeah, no, I felt the same. I mean, it's so special to be able to put on a song recital in a space like that where you have such direct communicate. I mean, such easy access to your audience. It's like they're right there. It's also, we were there on I should note, the 150th anniversary of the outbreak of the Great Fire, which, seems like a random anniversary to celebrate in terms of immigration, but actually it was a real turning point in the history of Chicago immigrant communities. And the original structure on that property was destroyed. And the only reason the structure is standing now is because it was rebuilt by immigrant communities that came together as part of a labor movement that brought these disparate communities of marginalized people together for the first time in solidarity. So I don't know, just the historical moment of that for me too was kind of special.
I know, kind of the fact that that was happening at the same time as this program. It's kind of like
Synchronicity.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm going to take this opportunity to invite anybody who's watching to please give us a question if you have one for Ronny. Ronny is ready to answer your questions. But as you ask that and the delay catches up, so what do you have coming up? Tell us what you got coming up.
So, well, this Friday, there's a stream of Collaborative Arts Institute of Chicago, which I'm very excited about. Because, it's different now, right? Doing a performance live and then getting to see it later, also online, and get a different angle, different, it's the mics, it's like different acoustic or different perspective. So I'm excited for that. But basically, for the rest of this year, I'm doing a bunch of concerts here in San Francisco. So we're doing a Halloween themed Death by Aria performance that's right around Halloween next week. So very excited for that. And then doing some private performances in November in people's homes around the Bay Area. And in December, doing a holiday performance with my colleague Christian Purcell, as a bass baritone. So we're doing holiday music from Caccini to Bing Crosby.
Oh, wow. That's cool. Puccini to Crosby. I love that. So catchy. So is that here in the Bay?
Yeah, so the Halloween and the holiday concert are going to be in the green room in the Veterans Building in San Francisco, and yeah, I'm excited to just be able to kind of put on. This will be the first public events that we've put on for Taste of Talent since 2019, and I wanted to program events that were very festive and celebratory and highlight the social component of it. The nice thing about the green room is that it has a nice big outdoor balcony. And so it's a great opportunity for people to just connect and be together and enjoy themselves wearing their costumes if they choose to on the Halloween concert. And then for the holiday event, where I'm going to be trying something new, something that I've been wanting to do for a while, which is using a Wheel of Fortune and kind of having the audience spin it. And this is sort of like maybe in the encores portion towards the end of the program, where a little audience engagement and whatever the Wheel of Fortune turns on, that's what we perform.
Oh, wow. So it's kind of like choose your own adventure, but audience participation. That's fun.
Yeah.
So, okay, we do have a couple questions. Well, first of all, Christina Juka Krause says, no question. She just wanted to say hi to you.
Oh, hi.
Rachel Lowe says she's looking forward to hearing the concert on Friday. And then we have a question. So in your work at the opera, do you get to do much work with Art Song? And how does Art Song fit into your life and work there?
Well, I think sometimes we have some outreach events or private performances through the opera in which the opera singers need to choose the program, or maybe obviously there's opera involved, but I think that sometimes they can program Art Song. But that's, I'd say, not most of the time. I'd say my experience at the opera is full-fledged opera, big loud sounds and big spaces. That's sort of the majority of the time. Did that answer the question, or was?
Oh, I think so. I mean, that sounds like my experience when I was at the Opera House too. So, so we always end these, and I think I might have asked you these questions before, but we get to hear your answers again. Whenever I'm hosting this, I always am with two questions, which are, what do you see as the future of the vocal recital, and why is Art Song important?
Wow. The future of the vocal recital.
It's like my James Lipton moment with my Proust questionnaire.
Well, I really do think that artists need to be creative with what they choose to present in performances. And that's not to say that they can't do a traditional performance of Schubert songs, but I think as we evolve as a society and in our ever so changing world, I think it's important for us to be aware of our surroundings, listen to our audiences, and think about what people are interested in or what they might be interested in that they're not aware of. But having this approach of thinking, how can I present this in a way that's relevant to my community, wherever that is? Because there are different things that are relevant in the different parts of the world and different communities. Being creative with programming, I think new works is a very important thing. Embracing our current culture, current composers, who are paving the way forward, with art song. So that's for the future. Yeah, I also think that that's not only in the programming, but also in the context. So choosing new places like a museum to experience, a performance can, if you did the exact same performance, somewhere else, like in an auditorium, that's great too. But I think varying the location is also a way we can be creative and present the experience in a different light to people. Of course, there's the virtual component. I think that's probably going to stick, especially since we've developed all these skills over the last year and a half. And why not? Then we get to share it with so many people who don't live wherever we did the performance. Yeah, I'd say that there's a lot of really great things going for this art form and for this for the vocal recital.
That sounds hopeful. That's great. I share that hope. So now, why is song important?
Singing or art song?
Art song.
Art song.
I mean, it doesn't have to be just art song, but
I think so if I kind of put it into perspective, in a performance there are building blocks. And so like if you go to a movie or an opera or a musical, it's sort of like a long narrative made up of many little parts, which I sometimes like to think of as many art songs. But I think art song is important because it's that building block, and you can really craft. I think it's important for education. So like when singers start developing their voice and going to school, you can't start off with a full-fledged opera. You have to start off with smaller units, so that they can work on whatever it is, language, the vocal production, their breath, all these different things. I think that art song is a very good medium for education, for developing the voice and for exploring colors. And I think that's one of the many important things of art song. Just the act of the art song is something that's one of the treasures of the world, in my opinion. And I think so just for that reason, it's one of the most beautiful things there is. And so we should cherish it and preserve it.
Yeah, and keep it alive. Well, thank you so much for that very beautiful answer. And thank you so much for your beautiful playing a couple weeks ago, and beautiful playing that is going to be happening this Friday, again online. And thanks for doing this today. Really appreciate it. I'm going to just close this out here, and then we can say goodbye to Facebook. So everybody on Facebook, we will not be back next week with Heard Over the Piano. We actually will return on November 3rd with soprano Helen Jibing Wong. And before then, we have this Friday the broadcast of the second concert of the Collaborative Works Festival, Strangers, which includes songs by Irving Berlin, Florence Price, Robert Owens, Chen Yi, Rachmaninoff, Stravinsky, Korngold, and actually many more. And that airs. It's got its premiere broadcast here on Facebook Live and also on our YouTube channel and at our website on Friday, October 22nd at 7 p.m. Central Time at all those places. So please tune in there for the premiere broadcast. And if you can't tune in Friday night, it's available for on-demand streaming all the way through the end of next Thursday, October 28th. So we hope to see you there, and please tune in and hear Ronny's amazing, amazing, beautiful playing.
And Nick's beautiful singing.
Very kind. And everybody else's beautiful singing. And Ronny, thank you so much. And Facebook, we will see you soon. Bye, everybody.